Week 5 of the fantasy football season has just about concluded with only one game left in the action, with the Chiefs and the Jaguars facing off tonight on Monday Night Football. But I mean, week 5 was electric. Rico Dowdle going for over 200 yards. Michael Carter seizing the Cardinals' backfield. Rashad White providing good streaming value. There is a ton of waiver wire pickups that make a big time weekly impact that can completely change the course of your season. A team could have added Darren Waller, Michael Carter, or even Rico Dowdle this week and can completely be in a different spot than they were in the week prior. So let's get right into this video and talk about the best waiver wire claims to know heading into week 6. What is going on, everybody? My name is Blitz Link, and today we are back with that waiver wire video. So let's get right into this list. And we're going to start with Michael Carter, who was already mentioned in the beginning of this video. And Carter has taken over as the clear primary back for the Arizona Cardinals this year. And, you know, we had the James Conner injury. Trey Benson's the next guy up. Trey Benson is now on IR. Michael Carter is that next guy up. He played over 58% of the snaps for this team. Bam Knight saw 16%. And then, you know, Amari Demercado had that infamous fumble after a 72-yard run. And sure, Demercado might be the more talented player on this roster with his career 6 yards per carry average. It's clear Michael Carter is the guy for Drew Petzing and his staff at 3.5 career yards per carry. Don't ask me why it makes sense, but it is Michael Carter's backfield to lose at this point. They gave him a significant amount of touches in the passing game and the running game, 23 total to be exact. He also scored a touchdown and cashed in on that value. So Michael Carter is going to be the biggest beneficiary of Trey Benson being out. He's only rostered in 39% of leagues right now. So those of you guys that still have him available, make sure you go and target him as fast as possible to go and get that high-end RB3, low-end RB2 the next 4 to 6 weeks, and he'll be a great plug-and-play option. We'll see how much longer Drew Petzing's there, but as long as Drew Petzing is the offense coordinator, Michael Carter is going to be the starter for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, the next player is a little bit interesting. It's Hassan Haskins for the Los Angeles Chargers. This is more of a speculative ad, as Amari Hampton left the game in a walking boot, leading to Hassan Haskins and Kamani Vidal taking the touches after he left. Now, officially, what the stat line was is Haskins played 8 of 9 snaps when Amari Hampton went down, with Kamani Vidal only playing 1 snap with the first team. Now, the second team came in the last drive of the game. Chargers trying to avoid any significant major injuries the rest of the season because we all know their offensive line's beat up. Justin Herbert even got a little bit banged up in that game. Martin Hampton now out, Najee Harris out. So they went a little bit with Kamani Vidal leading that second team. Haskins actually didn't even play with the second team at all. That indicates to me that Hassan Haskins, a guy that Jim Harbaugh had in Michigan, scored 20 touchdowns under him, could be the player that steps into that lead role if Amari Hampton were to miss any time. I think both players are well worth a speculative ad, and I think Haskins is the guy that could take this backfield. If Amari Hampton were to miss any significant time, Haskins could be that league-winning waiver wire pickup that you need to go grab. So I am considering throwing a majority of fab on Haskins, depending on the news with Amari Hampton's injury. I think that whether going into it, you're an RB needy team, 50% or higher fab seems like a reasonable amount for Hassan Haskins heading into this week. I think he does get 14 to 18 touches per game, becomes a strong goal line option for a Chargers team that desperately will need a running back if Amari Hampton misses any time. Jaxson Dart's our next one, and Dart, sure, he had a little bit of a quieter week. He 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 200 yards, 40 passing attempts, but also had 55 rushing yards against the Saints. And the Saints by no means are a good defense, but I think I know what I'm going to get from Jaxson Dart on a weekly basis. He's going to put up 18 fantasy points a game, basically, with this high rushing floor that we saw him have 5 points this past week. Last week, we saw the touchdown included in a similar amount of rushing volume as well. That gives him an elite floor. You pair that with an inconsistent passing usage, and the Giants will likely be trailing in a lot of games. Jaxson Dart is a viable quarterback one in fantasy football. Now, a lot of people are like, man, he couldn't do it against the Saints. Like, you know, let's go add Bryce Young against the Dallas Cowboys. I think that's fool's gold because the Cowboys did give Justin Fields a little bit of problems at times this past week. And I will say with Jaxson Dart, we know what we're going to get from him. He has that rushing floor. He can add in a little bit of passing volume when he need it, and that makes him a very good option in fantasy football because of that rushing upside. So with Jaxson Dart, I like him as more of that season-long stash. He's a borderline quarterback 2, borderline quarterback 1 on a weekly basis with his rushing upside, and can absolutely be a long-term ad that can take over at your quarterback position when you have an injury, when you have a bye, or whether or not you are struggling to find your long-term starter throughout this season. Mason Taylor is our next player on the waiver wire list, only rostered in 13% of leagues. The Mason Taylor train has finally caught up to the I don't know how to call it, the praise that I guess I've had for Mason Taylor over the last couple of weeks. He's finally turned into that consistent second option in this passing game for the New York Jets. Saw a 26% target share in week 5, and in week 4 that number was hovering at 25.9%. He had a really strong 67 yards on 9 receptions this past week against the Cowboys. And I know a lot of people are like, well, he didn't do a lot until garbage time. The Jets are always in garbage time, guys. They're actually 0-5. And Garrett Wilson, who is a wide receiver one universally at this point, has had a lot of his production when this team has been trailing by 2 scores. Mason Taylor is going to be no different. They had to find an option outside of Garrett Wilson in this passing game to rely on, and that option is Mason Taylor. He is finally starting to step into his own. He is getting that elite first read share that we want to see as that second option, and it makes me very intrigued about Mason Taylor being a strong low-end tight end one. Got to have him in your lineup type guy depending on the matchup. I think Mason Taylor is finally starting to break out, and it's nice to see a rookie tight end that is starting to, build that momentum going forward. Our next player is Brashard Smith, and Brashard Smith is not necessarily rostered in a ton of leagues, but he is definitely well worth the ad. The Kansas City Chiefs have been brutal at running the football this season, but there have been reports that Smith could be taking a bigger workload than he has the previous 4 weeks. This week against the Jaguars. Now, as I'm recording this video, it is before Monday Night Football, so we will see if that happens. Even if Smith, let's say he only has 10 touches in this one and he only plays 30% of the snaps, I am still adding Brashard Smith in every single league I can until the trade deadline and we see if Kansas City adds another running back and potentially shakes up this backfield. Brashard Smith is going to be their most electric guy. Pacheco and Kareem Hunt can't make guys miss in space. Their offensive line ranks last in the NFL in run block win rate right now. That's a bad combination. You got to add an explosive rookie like Brashard Smith, who is a converted wide receiver to running back. And we saw last week him be utilized on third down more than he previously had. Imagine that third down role, mix in 6 carries. That is Jerick McKinnon-esque of the Kansas City Chiefs. And, Brashard Smith could be that plug and play player in PPR formats that we desperately are looking for out of the Chiefs backfield. I think Brashard Smith is well worth more than a speculative ad. He is a great pickup and somebody that you need to stash on your bench. Jalen Coker is our next guy, and Coker made this list last week as well. Was not officially activated in week 5, but week 6, his practice window will open. He will get back on the field, and I am absolutely excited to see what he can do for the Carolina Panthers this year opposite of Ted McMillan. McMillan has had a great target share, a lot of great usage, but the touchdowns haven't come. They have come from other receivers like Hunter Renfrow, Xavier Legette, even the tight end position with Tommy Tremble, Jatavian Sanders. You insert Jalen Coker, who forced this team to trade Adam Thielen. They forced them to cut Hunter Renfrow after training camp because Coker was so good. Then he got injured, but Coker towards the end of last season averaging 55 receiving yards over his last 6 games, strong target share hovering right over 20%. He is going to be a very good ad down the stretch here, and whether or not Bryce Young, Andy Dalton, whoever the quarterback is, or even the coach with Dave Canales potentially being reported on the outs in Carolina at some point this year, whoever it is, Jalen Coker will have a number 2 receiver role in an offense that will be throwing the ball a significant amount of times. They rank top 10 in passing attempts in the NFL right now. So Jalen Coker, strong PPR option, a guy that you can plug and play in your flex on a weekly basis. And I think we're starting to understand now with these bye weeks, the injuries, whatever it is, having a guy like that on your bench is definitely well worth having at this point. Kenneth Gainwell is our next one. And like Brashard Smith, we haven't seen him play as this video is recorded, but Kenneth Gainwell is coming off a massive performance before these Steelers bye. Had over 100 total yards, 20 plus fantasy points, dominated snap shares with Jalen Warren out heading in to that London matchup. And I think that what's interesting about Kenneth Gainwell, sorry, not London, Dublin matchup, but Kenneth Gainwell could easily take a bigger snap share than he has had because the production was so good against a tough Minnesota Vikings defense. Jalen Warren was the team's lead bell cow back, operating at least 65% of the time out of the backfield. With Gainwell more as that puzzle piece as a PPR, dump down type of option. With Kenneth Gainwell, having this breakout game, the Steelers running game finally getting going, Gainwell could easily seize over that 50% touch and snap share metric that makes him a viable option in fantasy football. We know that he's going to get the dump downs out of the backfield from Aaron Rodgers. That is a clear plus being a Pittsburgh Steelers running back, but also adding a little bit more rushing volume. That makes Kenneth Gainwell a very, very good option. And He's still available in over 50% of leagues. And I think he needs to be rostered at this point. He has that upside. He has the role to potentially take a bigger workload. And he also kind of has that safe floor with that pass catching ability. So Kenneth Gainwell, another must add this week. Kendre Miller, is our next guy for the New Orleans Saints. Only rostered in 6% of leagues after being a notable pickup last week on this list. It happened. He played more than Alvin Kamara. He had more touches than Alvin Kamara, and Kamara had his lowest snap share in a long, long time this past week. Miller had 10 carries. Then week 5, Kamara had 8 carries. Kamara did have 4 targets, and he's always going to have that usage out of the backfield. But this is also coming off of a week 4 performance where Kendre Miller had 65 yards and a touchdown, and he earned more meaningful touches for this team going forward. We know what the Saints are at this point. They got their first win of the season. They have struggled the entire year so far, and they're going to be a team that is a seller at the deadline. Alvin Kamara, who's a veteran, is going to be an intriguing option. You mentioned the Kansas City Chiefs before. They could even trade for a player like Alvin Kamara. Kendre Miller is a younger player that the Saints need to figure out what they have in him, and I think they're going to continue to give him more opportunities to prove himself, and he's starting to do that. I expect a 50-50 split between Miller and Kamara going forward, and it hurts Kamara's value, but Miller, he's a guy that we have to make sure we're rostered in every single format going forward with his potential long-term ability as a team's clear lead running back, but right now it is a 50-50 split and a great stash going forward. Isaiah Bond is our last big player add of the week. Bond officially stepped into the number 2 role for the Cleveland Browns with Cedric Tillman out due to injury, and he's going to be on IR. So it is basically Isaiah Bond right behind Jerry Jeudy in this offense, and Jeudy hasn't really cashed in on his targets this year and has struggled. He's another player that could be traded potentially at the deadline. He has a 19.4% target share over the last 2 weeks, and he's averaging 45 yards per game during that stretch, which is definitely very intriguing. The next 2 matchups are even more enticing. He gets the Steelers and the Dolphins, who allow the 12th most and the 9th most PPR points per game to perimeter receivers this year. I think with Dylan Gabriel, I don't think he looked bad against the Vikings, who were one of the better pass defenses in the NFL entering that week, and obviously one of the best perimeter defenders of the wide receiver position in fantasy football. So with Isaiah Bond, I'm encouraged that with 2 upcoming favorable matchups, Bond can cash in with his increased workload here with a young rookie quarterback he's looking to build chemistry with. One thing's clear to me is that the Browns did a great job of drafting more talent in this team, and they want to see what they have out of this rookie class. Isaiah Bond is no different, and he is going to be productive throughout multiple weeks and potentially these next 2 weeks here. The final ad of the week that's a priority, it is the Green Bay Packers defense, and a lot of people are down on Green Bay. They're rostered in less than 50% of leagues. Obviously, we know what happened against the Cowboys. It was disgusting, 40 points allowed, but this is still a really talented defense that has a strong front. They're going to get Jake Browning this week in the Bengals, who Jake Browning loves to throw the ball to the other team, which is awesome for opposing defenses in fantasy football. Their offensive line's bad. They can't run the ball. A bunch of positives, and pick up the Green Bay defense when a lot of people are down on them in a must-start streaming matchup for this defense. Honorable mention waiver wires. I mentioned Bryce Young. I think a lot of people are going to target him this week against the Cowboys. He's definitely worth taking a look at this week to see if you want to plug and play him at the quarterback position. I mentioned Kamani Vidal as another running back option. I think Tyler Algier is a name to monitor as a potential trade candidate, or if Bijan Robinson goes down. Kyle Monungai had a bye week. He's a player that could play more with DeAndre Swift struggling to start the year. And then Isaiah Davis had a big role with Braylon Allen out, basically taking 33% of the snaps. He's going to be the handcuff to Breece Hall going forward. As far as wide receivers go, Darnell Mooney is still only rostered in 33% of leagues. He's definitely worth an add with his current target share, as well as Troy Franklin, who's had 2 straight quiet weeks, but he still played more snaps than Cortland Sutton, still had an elite amount of routes run. He's a player that you just kind of have to have on your bench. But the tight ends are the ones that are starting to elevate their play. Theo Johnson, 3 touchdowns in his last 2 games. Definitely well worth the add. Taysom Hill is back, had some elite usage and designed work in Kellen Moore's system as well. Brenton Strange has been really consistent for the Jacksonville Jaguars this year. Another good add as well. As far as defensive streamers, New England Patriots and the Las Vegas Raiders both have plus matchups this week. And then kickers, you have Chris Boswell coming off a bye. He's actually available in over 50% of leagues, so definitely well worth taking a look at there if you are interested in him. As far as players to drop at this point, Jerry Jeudy is a clear one for me. He can't cash in on any of his targets, and he's just not the same player he once was. Chris Rodriguez, Sean Tucker, and Amari Demercado were all three speculative ads heading into the week. I can't trust any of them, and I am dropping them regardless of what I mentioned before with Amari Demercado being the best back in Arizona. The team doesn't love him, so I don't love him. And then the final guy is Geno Smith, who leads the NFL in interceptions this year. As far as guys that I am not dropping just yet, Kyler Murray, he struggled this year, but you still have to roster him. Juwan Johnson for the New Orleans Saints had two incredibly tough matchups, but I think he's going to be better with easier matchups going forward. Woody Marks had a down week after being touted as a must start. Wan'Dale Robinson had a quiet week in his first week as the team's wide receiver one. Tajay Spears did nothing in his return, and then Chris Godwin has been pretty quiet since he returned. But I think all those guys are still worth rostering at the moment. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and drop a comment down below if you have any sort of waiver wire questions heading into this week. I am more than willing to help you guys out in the comments and see your success come to fruition in fantasy football. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. I will catch you guys next time on Blitz Fantasy Football.